All right, hello and welcome to the latest Project Spectrum Cyber Circuits webinar, Top 10 Cyber Protections for Small Businesses on a Budget. Thanks so much for joining us today, whether you're on the East Coast and it's afternoon, or you're on the West Coast and it's morning, or somewhere around the world and it's evening. We certainly appreciate you taking the time to join us today. So this is Rick with the Project Spectrum team, and I'm very happy to have our special guest with us today, Mariano Mattei, and we'll go in and introduce him in just a moment. But for right now, just want to say again, welcome to everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Just to let you know, just as a housekeeping item, we are recording this webinar. Now, your microphones and your cameras are muted. However, your names are displayed, so you're part of the transcript. And you're also, sometimes part of the recording. So if you are somebody who is uncomfortable being part of a recorded webinar, we ask that you jump off now. We'll give you a few moments to do so, and we'll go ahead and get started in just a minute, but we'll make sure that you get the recording of the meeting later on. So again, if you're somebody who is uncomfortable being part of a recorded webinar, please go ahead and jump off now. We have to do that because we are located here in the state of Maryland, and we have to let people know when they're being recorded. All right, I'm not seeing a mass exodus, so I'm going to guess everybody else is fine with it. So again, this is Cyber Circuits, Top 10 Protections for Small Businesses on a Budget. Your presenters today, I am over on the right-hand side of your screen, so I'll get to me in just a moment. But first, I want to introduce Mariano Mattei. He is the Vice President of Cyber Initiatives at Eccalon, and he brings more than 30 years of experience in cybersecurity, AI innovation, and software engineering to the role. He's a certified Chief Information Security Officer, and he has led AI-driven transformations across biotech, pharmaceuticals, MedTech, FinTech, and defense, integrating AI into clinical trials, manufacturing automation, quality systems, and regulatory compliance frameworks. And Mariano, we're going to give you a chance to introduce yourself a little better in just a bit. I always like to give that little introduction of you on the slide. And then, of course, I am here. I am the Strategic Communications Lead for Move America, which is a nonprofit that works closely with industry, government, and academia. And I always work with the Project Spectrum team trying to deliver outreach materials such as this Cyber Circuits webinar to businesses and organizations that are looking to bolster their cybersecurity posture. Again, our presentation reminders, your microphone and your camera are muted. You're not going to have the ability to change that, so please don't try to change that. Make sure you're checking your name to see how it's displayed for others to see. If you have questions during the webinar, please go ahead and place those into the chat box. We're going to review them. We're going to answer some in chat. We're going to have Mariano answer a few others as time permits at the end of the webinar. One reminder about the chat box. Please make sure that you are being respectful. Please do not disparage anybody else's question or comment. Please don't make comments that are disparaging. Please don't make comments that are self-promoting. We understand that everybody loves to promote themselves at one time or another, but this unfortunately is not the place to do it. So we're going to ask that you have no business solicitations or, again, no disparaging remarks toward any of your other fellow attendees. So those are the ground rules. And again, we are recording this, so this will go up on Project Spectrum's YouTube channel in just a bit. Speaking of Project Spectrum, I want to make sure that I start out by letting you know that Project Spectrum is here for you if you are looking to increase, bolster, or even start a cybersecurity program. Project Spectrum is a DoD endorsed and supported platform that provides artifacts, assessment tools, and advisory services, along with education and information services, all in a no-cost-to-you platform. Right now, there is absolutely no cost to join Project Spectrum. There's no cost to access any of the Project Spectrum tools, training, and resources that we have up on the Project Spectrum website. So you can see on your screen, we have quite a few of those listed. Everything from SSP templates to remediation plan templates. We have the self-assessment toolkit, a cyber readiness dashboard. All of that is available, including our cybersecurity training and education, our blogs, news items, and of course, briefings like this one. So we certainly encourage you to go to projectspectrum.io. Get yourself registered if you are not already registered. Again, does not cost you anything. And we don't do anything with your information other than use it to communicate with you. So make sure that you get registered on projectspectrum.io today. And want to make sure that, of course, while you're thinking about it, you remember to connect with Project Spectrum. We got a few ways for you to do that. If you go to the Project Spectrum website, one of the ways to do that is on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you're going to see a little question mark icon. You go ahead and click that, and that pops open a chat window where you can send us any type of request, whether it's technical support, whether it's a question, a comment, a concern. We are always happy to answer those. That gives you a chance to talk to us 24/7, 365. You also have webinars like this one, so you could check our events calendar on the website and make sure that you join us for our future webinars. We try to hold them at least twice per month. Projectspectrum.io, again, I told you about that question mark in the bottom right-hand part of the screen. You can also use the old-fashioned way and send an email to support@projectspectrum.io. or follow us on social media. You can find us on LinkedIn, and you can also find us on YouTube, again, where this video is going to be posted, because we are here to provide you with the tools, training, and resources that you need in order to enhance your cybersecurity journey. We want everybody to be as cyber secure as possible. So with all of that said, I would now like to take a moment to introduce formally Mariano Mattei. Mariano, the VP of Cyber Initiatives at Eccalon, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it. Love being
and
here.
So, Mariano, tell us a little bit about yourself. We got that sort of 35,000-foot overview, but let's give the folks a little taste of your background, what you were doing before you came to this role.
Sure. Better than that scripted intro is going to be tough to beat. But so I've got 30 plus years of experience in IT. The first half of my career as a software engineer out of college, coding for the Navy radar missile guidance systems. Then went private with a company that was eventually acquired by Lotus, then by IBM. So I spent a long time with IBM. About 3/4 of the way through my career at IBM, kind of saw the writing on the wall for cybersecurity. So that's when I moved squarely into cyber. So I've been doing that for the last 15, 20 years or so, and provide a lot of advisory services, but I've never really let go of my software engineering background. So especially now with the latest advancements in AI, I've been bringing those skills to bear as well, providing solutions to clients for integrating AI into cybersecurity.
Oh, fantastic. And then now you've joined Eccalon as the VP of Cyber Initiatives. What's your role there, and what are some of the goals that you have going forward?
Yeah, so the second week here at Eccalon. So so I'm one of the projects I'm going to be in charge of is Project Spectrum specifically. So I've got a lot of ideas about how we can automate a lot of the processes there, and a lot of enhancements to the functionality of the website as well. So that's where I'll be starting. And of course, there's a lot of other projects going on that I'll have purview into and be able to assist with.
Excellent. And then I'm also going to share my screen just for a quick second here, because we also understand that you are an author as well.
Yeah, so still, it's been quite a journey. So I just recently graduated from Temple University with a master's in cyber defense and information assurance, and part of that journey was completing independent study. And my idea for the independent study was exactly this book, because a lot of the clients that I was going in to assist, I was surprised that out of all of them, and there's been many clients that I've helped in cyber, only about 2 ever had metrics that were recorded and reported. And I found that to be astonishing, because you would never walk into a board meeting without the CFO putting slides up, telling a story about the data, profits, right? So why are we not doing that with cyber? How effective is the money that we're spending in cyber? How effective are our defenses? I thought there has to be something out there on this topic, and to my surprise, there was not. So I decided to write this book. It was originally just going to be part of a project, but that got sidelined. I had to develop a student-run security operations center, which was fantastic. But then the book got sidetracked, and one of my professors had a relationship and a book with Manning, and I asked for an introduction if he liked my idea, and he did. And the introduction went well, and Manning picked it up. And so hopefully within the next few months, I'll have this out in print.
Well, and we certainly do look forward to it. And for those of you who are interested in the book, we do have a website link here that we'll also paste into the chat. And then we also have a QR code, which, we certainly would, would welcome you to go ahead and scan that. If you want to get your phone out and scan it, please feel free to do so. But like I said, we've also put that link over into the chat. So would certainly, love to have people read what you wrote, Mariano, because again, I think that's amazing. It's where you see a need and there's nothing there, and you're really wanting to jump in and fill that need. That really does embody the spirit that a lot of the Project Spectrum users have, because again, for those who are looking to be part of the defense industrial base, it's seeing that need, seeing that you have innovation that you can bring to others, and then bringing that forward. And that's, we really do welcome that type of entrepreneurial spirit within our users, and certainly within our folks here at Project Spectrum and within Eccalon, because that's really what it's all about. And then with that said, you talked before about, about where the money is being spent. And that is one of the main things that we often hear from Project Spectrum users is, how much is it going to cost me in order to be cyber secure? Because they're always, again, looking to try to bolster their cybersecurity or implement a cybersecurity program. And it becomes challenging for especially the smaller businesses that are very resource constrained, because a lot of them, they're focused on production. They're focused on, making payroll sometimes. And so cybersecurity, a lot of them see it as a luxury, but we know that that's not really the case. It's not a luxury. It's not a nice to have. It's a must have, especially if you want to start selling to the DoD. And so that's why I think this topic, where we talk about the cyber protections for small businesses on a budget, is most important. Because what are your thoughts as far as, when a company comes to you and says, what is it going to cost for us to become cyber secure?
Yeah, and I'll give you the typical CISO answer of it depends. But so having said that, we see this a lot, especially all the years that I was working in consulting. Unfortunately, a lot of clients came to us when it was too late, right? So they've been breached, or something terrible has happened, and now they're taking it much more serious because they just didn't think that they were targets. And I can tell you, everyone is a target. Everyone is a target. Especially just most recently in the last year, once the hackers started attacking hospitals, that's when all bets were off, because now human life doesn't even matter over the money. And from a gross domestic product, cyber criminals are third. So there's the US, the China, and then cyber hackers. And it's a huge amount of money in a huge business. So everyone is on the block, and gone are the days of somebody sitting in their basement. These are companies that are set up. They use Salesforce, they have clocks, they have quotas, and they have clients, who they need to bring in money to the organization. So sooner or later, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I'm not a fan of scare tactics. This is just the reality and the nature of the world that we live in now, especially with AI. It's become even easier for hackers to try and attempt to break into your systems. Unfortunately, there's been a couple of clients that have come to us in my consultancy years when it was too late. Somebody posed as an employee, got into their systems, and they could not recover. They couldn't recover not just financially, but they couldn't cover from the reputational loss. So,
Right. And yeah, and that's one of the things that we always mention is it's not just the dollars and cents, it's the
absolutely.
reputational loss, because when somebody knows that you're a weak link in the chain, they don't want to add you to the chain.
Yeah.
So it's always about, again, like you said, trying to be very vigilant and trying to be very proactive. And I think that's really one of the reasons why this topic is going to be very important for a lot of folks who are tuning in today. So let's go ahead and start with your list. You know, we're
Sure.
not going to do the traditional David Letterman top 10 type thing. This is this is going to be more informational than entertainment. But you know, so what would you say when you're starting out with number one? Is it number one because it's most important, or is it number one because it's easiest to hit with that low hanging fruit type area?
I think, yeah, even before we get started with the list, honestly, it is the recommendation really is to align your organization with some type of framework. So you could just, start with what you feel is a top 10, or just analyze the nature of your business and decide what you really need to protect, like identify what the crown jewels are. But if you align it with a proven cybersecurity framework, two of them come to mind. There's the CIS top 18, which is most easy to follow because there's basically 18 controls. That obviously they expand into other controls, but it makes it a little bit easier to digest, just having 18 things that you should concern yourself with. And you can evaluate each one of those. Or another one, very popular one, is the NIST CSF. The version 2 is out now. Many more controls. I think there's 114 to 120. I forget the exact number. But if you align it with a framework, then you can better track and evaluate where you are in terms of, are you 60% protected? Are you 100% protected? And the interesting thing about the CIS top 18, I think it is I want to say the first 5 to 8 controls that if you just implement those, which is pretty much what the top 10 is based upon, you reduce your risk factor by 85%. So
Well,
trying to get the most bang for the buck, right?
Right. And that's impressive. And that's what we end up telling a lot of people, particularly, with DoD, everything is focused on CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. And level 1, again, which follows very closely with the NIST framework, level 1 only has the so many controls, but we had our last cyber circuits where our guest and our expert said, don't try to do everything all at once. You have to start small and then work your way up. But to know that you can implement a portion and cover yourself by 85%, I mean, has to be something that's really encouraging to some of these businesses, again, that don't have the resources necessarily to throw at this all at once.
Yeah, making use of the free resources on Project Spectrum and filling out that level 1 for the CMMC, it gives you a percentage, right? You know where you are, and I think there's also a free remediation plan that's given out from Project Spectrum too. So it tells you where to start and what's next. So aligning with a framework that's important to your business is really before you even take any steps. That's really the first thing that you should do. To help you traverse it, right? Because then it gives you something measurable. It gives you something that you know where the next steps are. You know what's missing. We call it a gap assessment in the industry, but that's valuable.
Right. And that's really what that self-assessment tool on Project Spectrum is all about. It's about finding your baseline. Where are you starting from? And then where do you need to go from here in order to get to the level that you want to get to? Because as we tell most small businesses, they'll probably only ever need CMMC level 1. They'll probably only ever need NIST 800-171. So it's not necessarily going to the same level as the larger companies, but to a small business, those 17, 18 controls, it's, that's a mountain. It's a huge mountain, but every journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. I always like to call that into it.
That's correct. we have a saying that you can't boil the ocean, right? So one step at a time.
Boiling oceans, eating elephants. I mean, we've got a lot of different ways that we could say it.
Pick your phrase. Yeah.
I always say, pick your favorite idiom here. So, all right. So now that we've got that established with the framework, and again, trying to figure out that framework, that is certainly something that the Project Spectrum cyber advisors are very happy to help you with. They're very happy to help you find out what framework you want to need. Because again, if you want to go to DoD and want to start selling into the defense industrial base, it's CMMC. Sometimes you want to go with other federal agencies. So again, it could be NIST, it could be the other ones that Mariano mentioned, but finding that framework. So once you know what you need to do as far as that framework goes, that's where these other protections then come in, correct?
Yeah. So most often what happens is, especially for either new, small to mid-sized businesses, you're worried about your business. You know your IP, your niche, right? You know your science, you know your data, your product, your manufacturing process. That's what you know. That's what you raised money for. That's what got you on the map and started your business, right? And so cyber might not be something that you're familiar with. So with having an advisor is a key if you don't have somebody on staff that can run these types of projects. Many times we see IT in a dual purpose role, right? So the IT person, because most of security technical controls end up being part of the IT purview. So, where do you start as a business, before you even get into budgeting and things like that? And it's really just knowing what it is that you have. You know your business, so you know what data is important to you. And knowing what systems are in place, what systems are connecting to your important data, and classifying that data, right? So what data can you not survive without? That's your most important data. Those are the crown jewels of the company. So really taking an inventory of what it is that you have in your company or in your systems, laptops, what connected mobile devices, what servers are in use. Are you a cloud, 100% cloud? Are you a hybrid, or are you, on site, on-prem? Knowing what you have is basically that first step. Because if you don't know what you have, how can you protect it? So it's really where you should start before implementing any type of controls over it.
No, and that's true. And really, again, Project Spectrum there to help with that. We have training courses on, especially your data, because that's the big thing, especially when it comes to federal contracts with the DoD. You've got the two different types of data. You've got FCI and CUI, and a lot of people have difficulty understanding what is FCI, what is CUI, what do I need to lock down. But it's not just FCI and CUI. Again, when it comes to small businesses, especially those that have innovation, we tell them all the time, your intellectual property is the thing you should be protecting the most, because there are people that want it, and that's what they're targeting you for. It's not necessarily always just the financial reward, but it's also the data that they can get out of there, and that intellectual property, that proprietary data for your innovations. If they can take that and they can steal it and they can take it to market sooner than you can, then they've really got themselves a windfall.
Yeah, excellent point. I mean that's really, you have to understand what it is that you have before you could do anything about it, and classification of that data, and where that data resides is key.
Definitely. So then when we're talking again about these protections that people want to put into place, where do we start?
Yeah, I mean,
where does a small business start?
You can look at a lot of the reports that come out. One of my favorites is the Verizon data breach report that comes out on an annual basis, and almost year after year after year, you can see it as credential attacks are probably number one. So weak passwords and things of that nature, or compromised credentials in general. just allow someone to get into your systems because now they know your username and password, right? And now the passwords have become so, the requirements for passwords have become so complex. I mean, we recommend anywhere between 16 to 20 characters, uppercase, lowercase, numbers, special characters, and things of that nature. You can't remember every password for every application. And so a password manager really does come in handy, and one that, and I'm a big proponent of open source software because it can save you a tremendous amount of money. But there are many of them out there on the market. But what that allows you to do is set a separate, really strong password and not have to remember all of it, right? So your computer in essence remembers it. Now the caveat being that better be protected by a very, very strong password that you do remember, right? So, you know, it can't be password one exclamation point, but so, you know, that and a lot of people kind of balk at this, but you know, two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication, that is a tremendous deterrent to hackers. So now, even if they have your credentials somehow, they cannot get into your system because they don't have your cell phone with them that can unlock it biometrically, or with your code, and then enter that multi-factor authentication. Now you can set that too, so it's not that much of a burden on your employees. You could say, okay, you know, trust this device for the next 14 days before you ask me again, or something to that nature. So it doesn't have to be every single time, oh geez, I have to break out my phone. And that's assuming you can't afford a passwordless type system where you just enter your password online, your username, and your phone pops up and says, okay, this is the person you're trying to get in, yes or no. You click a button and you're in. So you don't have to search for it, enter the 6-digit number or whatnot. So it's a little bit less of a convenience, but of course that comes at a cost. So it's really, you budgeting, right?
Right. And a lot of people do complain about the multi-factor authentication, but you really do have to understand that it is there for your protection. I'm one of them. I can't stand when I have to constantly change my password, or I have to constantly go to the multi-factor authentication, especially when it comes to, like, you know, the Office products with Microsoft, and you have to have the Microsoft Authenticator. But I also realize that if somebody were to get my password, and I have that pop up all the time, I'll have a text message pop up that says, you know, here is your one-time authentication code for your Verizon account. Somebody obviously has either guessed my password or it's appeared in some sort of data leak somewhere. I'm glad that I have that two-factor authentication, because I can't imagine the number of cell phones somebody would go buying on my Verizon account without me knowing about it.
Yeah, and you bring up a really interesting point, Rick, because if you want to know if your password's been compromised or your username's been compromised, you can go to a site called Have I Been Pawned? PWND, I think. And you can enter your email, and it'll tell you what breaches your account has been a part of. So you can check it. You could check it today to see if it's been compromised. And then obviously if it says, well, you know, your Airbnb username and password has been compromised, then you can go and change that password. Oh, that's it. Yeah, thank you for the link. Yeah, perfect. Yeah,
excellent, Mark. Yep, jumping right in there, Mark, and you know, that's really great to know. I'm gonna have to visit that one, because I do get those every now and then.
Be surprised, yeah.
Yeah, well, and you always get the emails or the letters from somebody saying your data might have been breached, or you know, your data was part of a breach, and a lot of times, like after the fact, there's not a whole lot that you can do. But again, knowing that it may be, you know, happening in real time, I think is one of the things that's really strong, and that's where that multi-factor authentication comes in.
Yeah, when you get those type of emails, it's the suggestion really is to not click on the links in the email, right? Go to the actual site and type it in manually, and then see if that notification is legitimate. Because we've seen it now, they're taking advantage of that as well, just to scare people into clicking the link right away. Oh, geez, my password's been compromised, and they click it to reset it, not knowing that they're actually giving them now their password. So,
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah, now we had a lot of celebrities that learned about that and in that one data breach, and they all fell for it. But that is the problem. We're human, and
We are human, correct?
the threat actors are getting more and more sophisticated with their tactics. So that's why you have to be extra vigilant. Don't trust anything. Make
Yeah.
sure, we just had zero trust last week where we
Yeah.
talked about that. This is the same thing. Zero trust should be on your end as well. Don't trust anything that you're getting over email. Don't trust anything you're getting over text. You should just make sure things are on the up and up. So
Yeah.
what else is it that businesses really need to focus on when it comes to, again, protecting everything?
I guess next, at a lower budget, cost would be regular backups, right? So most cloud providers have that built into their system, so you're kind of already paying for it. But there is a misconception that just because you're with Azure, AWS, or Google, somehow you have all of these protections in place, and it's simply not true. You have to go through the process of really making sure that you've enabled all of these protections as well. And that includes backups. And it's always good to have backups in the cloud or images because they're quick and easy to pull. But it's also recommended to have an offline backup somewhere. So periodically you take an offline backup and you keep that tucked away somewhere safe just in case. So that's probably the next most recommended step that companies can take, is to just ensure that their crown jewels are backed up somewhere safe.
Right, because and that's the thing, especially when it comes to ransomware. If somebody locks you out of your data, you've got really two choices other than closing the doors and walking away and saying, well, we tried.
Yeah.
It's again, you want to get that data back, but you either pay or you have it somewhere else where you can access it and not necessarily worry about that.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that I've sat in conferences and panels with people from the FBI, and so usually with in the case of ransomware, you would try to get someone like them involved because, believe it or not, these organizations that have conducted this attack on you, they actually have reputations. They have relationships with the FBI. So FBI knows who to call. They also know whether or not they're reputable in terms of, if you pay them, they'll actually give you the keys that will unlock your data. So they actually have reputations being criminals. It's kind of bizarre to think about it, but it's true. So yeah, you could pay, which is not the recommended action, obviously, because that just exacerbates the entire situation and makes things worse for everyone. But a lot of times there isn't a choice. A lot of times people have not had a reputable backup, and they haven't tested the ability to put that back into place, and that fails. And then what do? You have no choice.
Right. And then when you're talking about the external hard drive, again, this is another area where you have to be really careful, because having that external hard drive is great, but having it laying around the office where anybody could walk by and pick it up and plug it
Yeah.
in somewhere,
Yeah. And I should
it's
state
not
that
something you want to do.
that should be encrypted, obviously, not just a Best Buy,
Yep.
couple gig hard drive, and then you think you put it in a safe somewhere. It should be encrypted. Which is another interesting point, because a lot of people, I would say maybe 5 years ago, if their information was encrypted and stolen, they didn't really care, right? No big deal. They can't get it. The cyber criminals will never get it. But now, with all of the advancements in AI and the advancements in quantum computing, a lot of those older encryption keys that are not quantum resistant will sooner or later be broken. Which is why the cyber criminals steal it and just keep it, because at some point, one day, they will be able to crack those encryption keys.
Very true. Very true. And again, one more instance of AI. It's so helpful, but sometimes it helps the wrong people.
Yeah, and I think that's true for almost every technology breakthrough that has come down the pipe, right? You can use it for good or you can use it for bad, and unfortunately, that's the nature of advancement in technology. So
Very true.
yeah,
And then, I understand again, we're talking about backing up your data, but it's also about making sure that you still limit the access to that data, correct? I mean, there are a couple different things that you can do there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things you can do is set up your admin rights and limit it through role-based administration. So, an admin should not, or a user should not have admin capability, let's say for your laptop, right? So they can't click a button and have something automatically install because they're admins. So there's certain protections you could put around that. You can go the path of least privilege. I mean, if I am a software developer, I shouldn't be able to access employee files, right, from HR. So there's a lot of role-based levels of protections that you could put into place. And you mentioned malware, for email, obviously, any kind of endpoint protection or having some kind of virus and malware scanner on all your systems is key as well.
Right, because as a lot of people understand, we talked before, we're human, and humans make mistakes and humans make errors. And with the threat actors getting much more sophisticated, we always say during our Project Spectrum training webinars, we are one mouse click away from things going very wrong very quickly. And it used to be in the past where you could pretty much tell that something wasn't right. Something just wasn't passing the smell test. Now they're getting much more sophisticated with the social engineering and where they're reaching out and pretending to be somebody within your organization, and they've got their email address. So it's the CEO's email address, and you get an email from the CEO. I know when I get an email from our CEO, I immediately drop everything else. I want to do exactly what he's asking to do. But sometimes that's, take a look at this document, and it's this innocuous looking link.
Yeah.
That you think is just going to be, oh, this is just going to take me to our SharePoint, and the next thing you know, you're putting in credentials and you're opening up a whole can of worms.
Yeah, I mean, email, text messaging, they're very popular and very effective. Obviously, there's also now voice, because AI is getting so good at being able to mimic someone's voice that people are now in the cyber industry, we're recommending you have an actual password that you share between each other. So if someone calls you and they say, oh, this is my son is calling me and he's in jail and he needs $10,000 wired to him, which has actually happened. I can say, well, what's our passphrase? So the AI won't know that, but my son would. So, similar protections are coming down the pike for those types of relationships, because it's getting more and more sophisticated with AI.
Right. And then, when you were talking about malware and again, that endpoint protection where you're really trying to do that, and these are things that can very easily be solved without spending tens of thousands of dollars on an instance, right?
Yeah, I mean, training is key here. Running phishing campaigns is another good way to test it. So test and see who's clicking on it or who's entering credentials. There's plenty of offerings out there that allow you to run those types of campaigns to really measure how well your employees are performing. Not just your employees, quite honestly, everybody in the company, including the CEO, because most of them are going for those, the whaling, what they call it, is going for those executives. So, those types of things are key to do as well. The training and the testing.
Yeah, it's almost like making people into your own human firewall, right?
Yeah, and I'll say something from a CISO's perspective that not many CISOs enjoy me saying, but I've said this at many conferences. As a CISO, if someone in your company is clicking an email and is able to take down your entire system in your company, you're doing something wrong, right? As a chief of information security officer, it should be nearly impossible for that to happen or contained immediately. Right, so that should not be able to spread. And if you look at a lot of these breach reports, a lot of times the cyber criminals are inside your system for months before you even detect it.
Right, and And that is one of the things that we do preach, is that when somebody gets access to your data, they're probably not going to act on it right away. They're going to hang out for a little bit. They're going to sniff around and see what's there. They're going to see what your patterns are with your data so that they can try to do things in a minimally invasive way,
Yeah.
so that you don't really see it, but they're going to get in there and they're going to start tunneling their way through, and they're going to cause all kinds of havoc down the road. But it's not going to be somebody gets in and immediately your data is turned off. They immediately issue you a ransom demand. They're going to stick around because they want to see what's there. Like you were talking about before, that asset inventory, understanding what you have. They're going to understand what you have and what value you are to them before they take any action.
Right. When they get into a system, why would they want to set off any alarm bells? They'll just keep quiet and see where they can make the most money and then go after that. Right.
Right. But then, again, that's really where that, the firewall or DNS filters, that can really help, because you're really looking to make sure that any of that malicious traffic that comes in, or any of those domains that shouldn't be accessed, are really filtered out, because we want to make sure that we're bolstering that human component, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the firewall is key with the deny as your baseline, right? So you should only allow very specific traffic coming in and out of your company. There should be a lot of items that are on your block list, and quite frankly, if you're not a global company doing business in certain countries, you should block those companies entirely. Even though there are ways around that, spoofing their IPs and so forth, but it's just an added layer of protection, as we call it, layer your protections. So yeah, having a firewall or a DNS filter is another very inexpensive way to add an added layer of protection.
And then, really, when it comes to any organization, you're running a whole different type of, everybody's system is very different, but a lot of things that, can be very consistent. If you're an organization that's running on PC, then you've got the operating system on the PCs, and a lot of us use Windows, for example. One of the things that gets me about Windows is we always complain about these things. There's never a good time for a Windows update, is there?
It's always at the most inconvenient time, right?
It's almost like I'm half expecting my computer to have a window pop up during this webinar that's going to tell me that my computer is going to reboot in 30 seconds, and I have absolutely no choice but to let it happen. But as inconvenient as that would be, it would really prove a point, because those updates happen for a reason.
Yeah.
What really prompts the manufacturers or the software developers? What prompts them to push out those updates?
I mean, it really comes down to what vulnerabilities have been listed, and they can prioritize that in various ways. But most often is if there's a known exploit for vulnerability. So, for example, they might know that there is a problem in the code that could allow possibly someone to get in, but it has not been developed yet. The higher priority ones are ones that they know that there's a known exploit out there on the market that someone can just download, and now they know how to get into your system. And those legacy systems are a problem, especially in hospitals, because you see that, they've got still Windows XP running, believe it or not, which hackers can get into very, very easily and quickly. Windows 10, same, so keeping that updated is expensive. It's not always feasible. Some legacy systems are not compatible with the newer systems. So for example, if you have an MRI machine, let's just say that's 20, 30 years old, but still functions. However, the software has never been updated. They don't have a newer version for it. And you can't just simply upgrade the operating system, because now it's incompatible with the device itself. So those are some struggles, that a lot of companies have to deal with. But patching, automating that patching at off hours, if you can, it's probably one of the most popular ways of doing it. So this way, when you sit back down at your laptop and you open it up, it says, "Oh, an update has taken place," which is great. So now I can just jump right back into work, right?
Very true. And the interesting thing is you mentioned Windows 10, because I think a lot of people don't realize this. And again, no knock on Microsoft. They've been doing this, like you said, since Windows XP, since Windows 97 or 98. Remember Windows 98? I remember Windows
Yeah,
98.
and the
Uh,
like.
and when that went away and it went to XP, we were all complaining. But they're going to stop supporting these things. And Windows 10 is another example where Windows 10, the support is going away this year in October. And anybody who's still running Windows 10, you're not going to be able to update to the latest versions of Office, and that leaves you open to a lot of vulnerabilities. So it's one of those things. Always trying to make sure that you're getting those updates and getting those patches. But you talk about machines that are running older software. We do see that a lot in the manufacturing industry because, again, if you have a machine that works and it is making what you need it to make and it's doing what you need it to do, upgrading it to the latest hardware, that's oftentimes a huge expense because it's not just plug and play with a lot of these systems.
Yeah.
They're running software, like you said, it's 15, 20 years old or even older.
Yeah, unfortunately, you often incur some downtime, and like you said, it's not as easy as it sounds. So the devil really is in the details there. When you try to implement something that is even a proven solution, it might not work as advertised in your environment.
Excellent. So what else should small businesses be thinking about, again, when it comes to protecting themselves, when we're talking about these top 10 protections? And we will, for those of you that have asked, we will make sure that we're going over them at the end. We're giving that nice little high level thing so that we go back over. But what else is there when it comes to what a business owner or what an IT professional, system admin needs to really focus on to protect these small companies?
Yeah, I guess, we've gone over much of it. From what I can tell, I think that the last two remaining pieces as my top 10 would be logging and monitoring. So there's a lot of open source SIM solutions out there that allow you to collect logs and aggregate them to a single pane of glass so you can actually see what's going on in your systems. That would be key. And from that, you're able to collect a lot of really interesting metrics. So if you can automate that, much of those metrics, especially the ones that I talk about in the book, you're not creating these. You're not spending any extra time or money to create them. You're just compiling that data and telling a story with that data. So those would be my next top 10 steps, is really putting some kind of logging and monitoring system in place, a SIM or SOAR, and then from that deriving meaningful metrics that mean something to you and your company and what's important to you.
So what really are the essential metrics that a company would need to look at?
I mean, just talking off of the top 10, because that could change by the nature of your business, what metrics are most important to you or where you're spending your money. That's obviously where you want to spend the most time in analyzing that data. But just from these, I would say, how many systems are current with their patch levels, protecting those. How many number of users have MFA enabled? Because again, it's not always enabled by default. What's your backup rate? Have you successfully backed it up? Are you able to tell? Are you able to restore those backups? So collecting those types of metrics would be important. In terms of tracking incidents, how many incidents have you investigated? Potential incidents, did they turn out to be an actual incident or a false positive? So give you some measure of your attack rate, your attack landscape. Security training. So how many people have completed their security training and passed the test at the end of the day, and or your phishing campaigns, which is a key metric, right? What percentage of your company has passed that phishing campaign test or not? So just, based upon the top 10 that we've been discussing, those would be metrics that are of high importance. But again, you really have to understand what it is that your company does and what's important to you to come up with a good, let's say, top 10 metrics to be able to evaluate.
And then if you're someone again who's a system admin at a smaller company and you're trying to convince leadership to put a little more time, a little more effort, a little more budget towards cybersecurity. I mean, it's really all about having something that you can point to that would show some of that ROI because, like you said, the scare tactic, we don't like to use it. It's real. It's definitely real, but we tend not to look at the worst case scenarios. I tend not to get in my vehicle and think, well, what's going to happen if a tractor trailer veers over the double yellow line? I would never drive again. So I think it's really more about touting those benefits, and that's really where some of that reporting and some of those metrics and maybe creating a dashboard, even a simple spreadsheet, could really help.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, spreadsheets are difficult to maintain over long periods of time and to scale.
Yeah.
But for most small businesses, spreadsheets are fine. You can still compile that data and create some graphs that tell a story. And again, I'm with you. I don't want to sell fear, but I do want to sell what our risk exposure is, because that's important for the executives to understand and the board to understand. What is our risk exposure and how can we reduce that effectively? So if we spend this much money, how far do I expect my risk exposure to be reduced? And then what's the residual risk after that?
Correct. And then it's really all about, again, taking that first step. You've got to buy into it, first of all. You've got to have understanding. A lot of times you don't even have to understand it completely, but you need to understand that the need is there. And then
Right.
it's all about taking those first steps. So if I'm a small business that again is looking to get into DoD, looking to get into federal contracting, and I'm starting from absolute scratch. Obviously, I'm coming to Project Spectrum. I'm starting with that self-assessment dashboard. What are the realistic, first step timelines for, a business that wants to put some of these top tens in place?
Again, you'd have to evaluate, what's important to your company. A lot of times what you'll see from those type of assessments, which are great, is that remediation plan. So that remediation plan will tell you, what are the top items. You should not just have a remediation plan about how long will it take us to implement a solution to this specific control, but you can prioritize those, right? You can balance, well, how much time is it going to take to implement this? How difficult is it to implement it? And how much money is it going to take to implement it, right? And that'll help you with the determining factor of how much risk reduction you're going to receive from that implementation. It'll allow you to prioritize those in a fashion that you can get all of the low-hanging fruit completed very quickly. So let's just say within the first month, let's get everything that we can and close the controls that we know we can get done within the first 30 days. So they're not very expensive, they're not difficult to implement, and they don't take a lot of time and resources, right? So let's get those done first within the first month. And then you can prioritize the rest of that work to say, well, within, let's say our overall plan is 3 to 6 months, you can prioritize that month to month to say which controls need to be addressed secondly. And when you do these evaluations, you'll see some controls are in place that you don't need to worry about because you've already addressed them. And then you can evaluate the ones that are open, those gaps, if you will.
Excellent. So again, I think one of the things that we want to make sure that people understand is, we've given a lot of information here, sort of give that high level overview. So if we had to go over the top 10 things again, I'll let you rank them because again, you're the expert on this subject. So if start with number 1 and lead us down to number 10 and just give that nice high level overview so that people again know exactly what it is that we're trying to recommend.
Yeah, keep in mind, you can feel free to reorganize these in whatever order that you wish, but really picking a cybersecurity framework before you even begin is instrumental in getting this done and being able to track it, right? So making use of those CMMC level 1 questionnaires is a great first step, right? So once you have that, then you know your gaps. But just in terms of in general practice for small businesses, know what your inventory is, know what your assets are. That's software, hardware, intellectual property. Know where your crown jewels are, what they are, and where they sit, right? From there, password managers, multi-factor authentication is another key thing to implement. Making sure that you've got reliable backups that you're able to restore would be my third. Endpoint protection, any kind of email scanning software, plus some type of anti-malware, virus scanners on your systems would be number 4. Firewall and DNS filtering, number 5 again. You could put this number 1 if your systems are accessible from the internet and in the cloud. Patch early, patch often, as we say. So know what the vulnerabilities are. Make sure that these are getting done. Automated, if you will. Don't rely. I can't tell you how many times someone has shared their screen and it says it right there that you've got updates ready to, and they haven't done it yet. So, patch early, patch often. User awareness training. So make sure, even if you do this in-house, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars to hire companies to come in and do this training for you. Have 6 months to a year cybersecurity awareness training. I think October is the cybersecurity awareness month. Do it then if you want, if you don't have a better time for it. And just go over some of the fundamentals. Take a look at a Verizon data breach report and just report on what are the top things that are happening in cyber that you should be aware of, right? So what are some of the more prevalent malware or business email compromise attacks? Even that is part of your training. Limit access rights and user-based controls in place, making sure that not everybody has admin rights to their laptop. And even if they do, because typically as a developer, I need to install certain things, so I want admin rights, but I don't want it to be automatic. So I have to log in as an admin, take that extra step in order to install something on my laptop, typically. Logging and monitoring, and making sure you've got something in place. There's a lot of open source software out there that is great at taking logs from various systems and consolidating them and then giving you a single pane of glass. And then from that, you can pull a lot of really interesting metrics, or you could track metrics in a spreadsheet. Anything that will allow you to make graphs and compile that data that really tells a story. So front to back, top 10, that's where I would start.
Excellent. And then we do have one question that I want to get to.
Sure.
This is about cybersecurity insurance. Are insurance companies who provide business insurance making their customers have CMMC coverage? And if so, is that coverage comparable to DoD CMMC compliance? Now, I do know this. I do know that your regular property and casualty insurance does not cover cybersecurity. We preach that constantly. You have to have very specialized cybersecurity insurance in order to be covered for a cybersecurity incident. Do you know of any insurance companies that hold people to a particular standard, whether it's CMMC or whether it's NIST? I've not heard of that.
I don't know in general if there's something across the board, but they would want to know certain things that would help reduce your rates. Having cyber insurance covering CMMC controls does not equal certification. I know that for a fact. And compliance is not security, as they say, right? So even if you meet, let's say, a SOC 2 or even a high trust or any type of those types of certifications, that doesn't necessarily, that means you comply with those, but you're not necessarily 100% protected. And that's really the key. You can't eliminate risk. There's always going to be some residual risk that exists. and you have to be prepared for that. And cyber insurance is one of those ways to cover that end.
And that is true. And you always have to remember what the insurance company is looking for may not match up with what DoD is looking for, and vice versa.
Absolutely.
So everything is, there are always going to be different little nuances. So, well, Mariano, thank you again so much for doing this. We really appreciate you. You know, again, 2 weeks with the company, and you just sort of jumped in on the deep end, and we're really thankful about that. Again, folks, if you're looking for Mariano's book, we've got the QR code that I'm putting up on the screen again. We've got the link in the chat. So certainly want to make sure that you get a chance to do that. He's even giving you a 50% off code, right? We have that.
Manning is doing that.
Manning is doing that. Well, that's nice of them.
But they sent it up special for me for this purpose. So yeah, I appreciate it.
No, that's fantastic. So yep, you can go ahead and use that code and get 50% off. But again, thank you so much. We do greatly appreciate you joining us today. And you know, we certainly wish you the best when it comes to everything that you're going to be doing with Eccalon and with Project Spectrum. We look forward to talking to you again.
I appreciate that.
All right. So again, thanks so much, Mariano Mattei, for joining us today. Thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate your time, and we wish you the best of success on your cybersecurity journey. Have yourself a great rest of the day and a great rest of the week, and we'll talk to you again next month.
Thank you.